Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Natsu Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Watari-kun is about to collapse, Season 1, Episode 12. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode where Naoto ends up meeting up with Satsuki, and he's kind of stressing out. He's wondering, like, after everything being awkward and complicated as the world, with Yukari's mom Mio catching him with the condoms and everything, and it's like, do I have to break up with Yukari? But like, I don't want to break up with her. And even Satsuki's like, man, you are like kind of losing it today. But she's like, to be fair, you've been kind of unstable like every day, every time I see you, because he's stressing out because he's so torn between what he thinks he should do, what he's supposed to do, what's expected of him, what he expects of himself, and he's kind of being torn in multiple directions. It's like, it's just a very unfortunate situation, but I think that's also supposed to be the journey of life, where it's just like life throws a lot of curveballs your way, and it's just about how do you respond, and he doesn't really know how to respond. You're young, you're in high school, like you're still figuring life out, and I think that's where Mio comes into play, where I was not expecting her to immediately show up the way she did. We find out later on she got in contact with Toki because obviously there's history between him and Yukari, so she's known him for a long time, and so he knew exactly where to give her an idea of where to find Naoto. And so she's like, oh, I'll give you a ride, because he wants to go pick up some ice cream for Suzu, because he's like, yeah, I'm supposed to do that. She's probably super pissed. And Satsuki hops in a ride too, because for her it's like, I don't like, the fact is that like, I don't want to leave Naoto alone with you, because he seems like legitimately terrified of you, and it doesn't seem right to leave him alone, because like her mom is very like got a quick understanding of stuff. She probably reads a little bit to it, like just like Yukari can see through Satsuki, no matter what she says, how she's really feeling. Yukari can see that, and I guarantee you Mio kind of picks up on that too. It's like, oh man, he's fortunate to have like another pretty young lady in his life, which I think is perfectly fine in her mind, but also like she can see the pitfalls of that. Either way, they go to pick up the ice cream. Satsuki falls asleep in the car. She claims like not to have heard anything, that she slept very soundly. I wonder how much of that's true and how much is BS, because she said like later on, she's like, I'm not going to pry on anything. But Mio and Naoto had a very frank conversation, because he's like, do you want me to break up with your daughter? She's like, honestly, I think that would be best, because she'd only brought that up to Yukari last episode, because she's like, I know those condoms weren't yours. In fact, they were most likely my daughter's, and you took them just to kind of protect her. Show like you are a nice person. But, and I brought this up last episode, Mio's not being a bad person. She's just, trying to handle this thing the best way she can, because she's like, I wanted to talk to Naoto as, so he can understand where I'm coming from as a parent. It's like, I don't want you guys rushing into something you regret, especially because she knows Yukari's pushing for it. She sees that Naoto's kind of got the best of intentions, but like, your teenagers' sexual like urges and stuff like that. She's like, that's not a bad thing. It's like being aroused and those urges, that's not a bad thing. It's just a very natural human thing. And the fact of the matter is, she's like, because for Naoto, he's thinking like, well, as long as we keep ourselves under control, it'll be fine. But she's like, you can't live like that. You have your natural urges and stuff like that, and you might find yourself slipping down that road again if you're together. So why not make it a clean, even break? That way, you guys spend time apart. You get a little bit older. Once you become grown-ups, then you circle back and find out you still have feelings for each other. Then you can make your own decisions. But now you're still kids. You're still learning about the world. You're still discovering stuff about yourself. So. And I get where she's coming from too, of like, she's just a parent looking out for her child. It's like, I don't want you and my daughter to hook up, and then because it's going to hurt. Like, if things don't work out, it's going to hurt in the long run, because it's going to be like, hey, you got like, it's going, but it's also like, that is part of life. You have to learn, like, there's the ebb and flows that, there's the good, there's the bad, like, I guess, because she just wants to mitigate as much hurt as possible, but it's like, is it really up to you to make those decisions? It's like, well, you are her guardian, you are her parent, she's still a child, both like in your eyes and even legally. So it's like, it's not like she kind of has no say in it, but it's just like, as a parent in that situation, I don't know what I would do, because I think there is a little double standard of like, how would I handle it with a daughter versus a son? Like, I do believe there would be a double standard. I would hope to teach a son like to know when to wait do, and like wait till you get a little older. You don't want to be jumping into those decisions when you're super young. You want to be older and be a little more responsible. I mean, I'm sure, like, let's not like forget the whole thing he had with like Satsuki in his head when he was thinking, when she was bringing up his parents. Like, once again, I don't know if that was ever broached early on in the season, that like his parents had him while they were in high school. Like, they got pregnant. That kind of led to fallout with the families in general. And so, like, a lot of that pressure is probably, like, obviously that's somewhere in the back of his subconscious, considering, like, that manifested itself like that way in his head, you know? So, and it's really heartbreaking when he gets home and Suzu's yelling at him and he's just like, I'm sorry, hands her the ice cream. And she's like, well, not like I'll forgive you. And he kneels down and he hugs her. And he's just like, you are the most important person to me. Like, you come first and all that. But he's just like, what am I supposed to do with these feelings? Like, am I supposed to just cast them away? Because for him, it's like, I do love Yukari. It's like the first girlfriend he's ever had. It's the first girl, like, you know, he immediately started really crushing on her. And it's just kind of like, am I supposed to just toss those feelings aside, us to go back to being friends? That's not the easiest thing. But once again, it's like, you're young, and, you know, what seems like eternity now, it will seem like just a passing season, you know, as you get older and stuff. So it's a lot of complicated stuff and feelings going into this. And so ultimately, he decides to go on a date with her. And then Mio overhears this and she's like, well, I was hoping he'd break things off cleanly, but she's like, I guess she was hoping he'd come to this conclusion sooner, but it's like, well, I'll let things play out. Whatever the end results are is what the end results are. So she's like, she's kind of taking it as, I've said my piece. All I can do is just be here for the aftermath, whatever that may be, whatever form that takes. She probably has an idea of how this plays out, but he's so desperate because he is in love with Yukari that he's trying to prove her mom wrong and try to make it work. He's just, because he's working to take care of him and Suzu, plus like he's seeing, you know, Yukari every day, because it's like, okay, I'm also meeting her in public places, so as long as we're not alone, like, I don't have to worry about that stuff. He's like, right, it's fine. He also took some lessons from Suzu where she, like, basically she was supposed to do some summer homework, but she's like, fine, it's like, as long as I write stuff down, I'll be sure to do it. Like, that's kind of, I'm manifesting stuff by writing it down, and by writing it down, I have a clear goal in mind, and I'll be more likely to actually do it. And so he's taking that into consideration about seeing her every day, that it's all going to work out. I don't have to break up with her. I can work multiple jobs to like pay for me and Suzu to move out, which even circles back to Tomeo of it all, because she's like, oh, you still doing those prep classes thing? And he's like, I'm not doing that anymore. She's like, what, are you not going to college anymore? He's like, well, he kind of feels like college isn't built for someone like him, because for him it's like, my first and foremost responsibility is to look out for me and Suzu, and it's like, when I get older, I need to be independent, and, you know, need to be able to take care of me and Suzu and find our own place. But even Tomeo's kind of like, right, you think being independent, you have to do everything on your own, but just because you're independent doesn't mean you have to shoulder everything. And that's what he's trying to do. He's shouldering his own feelings with the whole Yukari of it all, trying to be responsible with her, trying to be respectful of Yukari and Mio, while also trying to keep his own urges in place, trying to keep things as, like, romantically platonic as possible, while also juggling his thoughts of like, well, do I want to go to college? Well, college isn't for me. I need to focus more on getting a job, and in fact, I should get more part-time jobs so that I have enough money to take care of me and Suzu, because it has to be us. I can't just like keep taking advantage of Tomeo's like kindness. I need to, like, it's on me to take care of her. Like, she's my sister. This is my responsibility as the older brother, as like her only like direct family in that regard. Yeah, you're our aunt, but it's like, you shouldn't have to shoulder the responsibilities of us. It's on me. Like I said, him and her bouncing for 2 years between families, like, and just everything. I mean, like, so much of losing your parents and then having to bounce from household to household in that 2 years, feeling like you don't really belong anywhere. All you have is each other. Like, that's kind of like that trauma and pain. It just kind of makes him think all of this is temporary, and he can't even view the possibility of this being a permanent thing, that he can rely on Tomeo, because he's like, no, like, that's me taking advantage of her kindness. She was nice enough to take us in, but like I said, she didn't know, like, the trauma she'd be throwing his way when she, like, yelled at him, like, I will kick you out, even threatened to do it earlier in the season. because of like the girl situation. I think it's because like she specifically caught him kissing Satsuki, or rather Satsuki kissing him, because whatever that is, it stems from stuff with her brother, and maybe she's just like lamenting of how things fell out with her brother and everything, and now she's like seeing history repeat itself and so scared and worried about that like she's projecting so much of her issues of her brother onto him, and she kind of hasn't quite recognized that, or maybe she does but doesn't realize like the gymnastics he does in his head of thinking like he has to do this all on his own. It's just, I legitimately am stressed out by this situation, because you know it's not going to end well. Like someone is going to get hurt, and like Watari is going to stretch himself too far, and I mean, especially because he's completely oblivious to like kind of his surroundings. Like he's trying to pretend like everything's okay, especially like Yukari happens to see him writing in his notebook like, okay, I need to get more jobs to take care of me and Suzu. That in turn is making Yukari, well, for one, like she wants to spend more time with them. They do that cute thing where they end up drinking each other's drink, but it's just the same drink, so it just makes it awkward. But it becomes a thing of, you know, she wants to spend more time with him, and her shirt bust open, but that wasn't intentional. That seemed to be an accident, but you also can't put it past it that it might have been on purpose. Maybe, maybe not, because Yukari has been a lot more forward than Naoto, because he's trying to be a gentleman. He wants to cherish this love. He wants to make it something that lasts. He doesn't want it to be something that's easily broken. He's talked about that a few episodes back. So then you also add in the Toki of it all, because he's talking to Mio about it, and he's like, am I the reason why you're trying to push them to break up? She's like, I can't say you have nothing to do with it. And I don't know if that's because she knows that Toki's probably been in love with Yukari since they were kids. It's kind of just like how Naoto is completely unaware of how Satsuki really feels about him, and he's unclear about how he feels about her too, and obviously like completely oblivious to Makina like being into him. So I think Yukari's in that same boat where she's so focused on liking Naoto, she doesn't like. So I think maybe she's playing, not trying to play Cupid, but she's just once again trying to mitigate as much hurt and pain going around. And she, like, you know, Toki was like, yo, like, Naoto's a good dude. And she's like, no, I recognize it. I know that he is. She's just kind of like, she even says later on, well, I don't think Yukari heard her, but it's like, oh, like, I get it. You're sneaking around with him. You're still seeing him just despite my feelings about it. She's like, well, it's 1 hour a day, so it's not that bad. But also she's like, it must be pretty tough on Naoto, because it's like, what, you're a young man. And I mean, girls can be just as like, I mean, I actually don't know the science behind it, like which one is more likely to be just like overwhelmed with like, you know, their sexual urges and stuff. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm sure there's a scientific thing of like, you know, maybe young boys or young girls. Like, I'd assume young boys would have more sexual urges than young women, but like, I don't know if that for a fact. You know, stuff like that could surprise you, where it's like, oh, it could actually be the other way around. But once again, it's just like, you can't just keep that under wraps. It's what she wanted them to kind of not be in a position where, like, because he's also trying, I mean, from the beginning, he tried not to give into those thoughts, because he wants to be the perfect version of himself, because he wants to be in a position where he's good enough to date Yukari, because he puts her on such a pedestal, and she kind of puts him on one as well, which makes her kind of feel insecure about her own, like, sexual desires, and now he's feeling insecure about it, because he's, like, his desires are taking over, and he's like, oh, I want to touch her, and it's just, he's feeling guilty about that. This whole thing is going to drive them nuts on their own regards, especially when you have Yukari thinking like, oh, he wants to do so much for his sister. It's like, am I taking away too much of his time? She wants to be a better girlfriend, so she's going to probably try to shift and change herself into doing stuff she believes will make Naoto happy. Not because in her mind, it's like, Naoto being happy makes me happy, but it's like, you don't want to be in a situation where you sacrifice your own happiness just to make someone else. I mean, yes, there's compromise in relationships, but it's a lesson I learned. I always reiterate it, that I learned as a teenager, because I made the mistake of, I made a significant other my everything. And especially at a young age, it's like, what the fuck do you know about the world and love and heartache? But it's also like, it's not my girlfriend at the time's fault. It was just me. Like, it was so new to me. I hadn't really had much love experience. And this was like the first time I legitimately fell head over heels for a girl. And like, she became my everything, and like my world revolved around her, which is fine to a degree, but like she became my everything. I lost who I was along the way, and it took me a couple years and post that relationship to kind of recognize that about myself and recognize like, oh, I can't let someone become my everything. I have to be my own person too. Like a relationship is both of us, being two separate people and finding that middle ground and growing together, both growing individually, but also growing together individually and also growing together. There's a lot there. And I just kind of let myself get halted, and that affected me a lot in the long run. So that's where I'm like, I get where Mio's mom is coming from, because like the situations that happen here, even as a teenager, could have ripple effects. And like some of the stuff I'm talking about, I didn't figure out and kind of deal with until like my early 20s, And that stuff, that was like a relationship from me being 15 to 18, and it took me quite a few years into my 20s, maybe 24, 25, maybe sooner, like to recognize that, but to really truly process it took me a couple more years to figure some shit out on that. Little time, a little wisdom and experience under my belt, and just kind of a lot of self-reflection. So that's where like I said, I come into this position, because also I'm coming at this from like a 33-year-old perspective now too, both talking about like my perspective on these dynamics and everything in this anime, but also, like I said, looking back retrospectively in my own life, so, you kind of have that, hindsight and stuff like that. So that's why I think that perspective gives me a little more understanding of where Mio was coming from, and just like how complicated and just how messy this can and will be. So I could be easily projecting a lot of my own thoughts and my own experiences onto this, that the storyline might not align and go the way I'm thinking it was, but it leaves the room for like, these are the pitfalls for where things can kind of go wrong in so many regards. And understanding more of where Mio's coming from and how she's trying to help them navigate this, but she also is letting them like, hey, you got to discover this on your own, figure it out on your own, the hurts and the bumps along the way. I mean, it doesn't help that, like, especially after that day of them hanging out and him having those urges, he is like, Machina hurt her leg, so he's not seeing Yukari, especially because she got used to seeing him every day. And I think that's going to be a problem in the long run. And now, like, her shifting and, it's like, oh, God, I missed his phone call. And now he's telling me, like, oh, I can't see you tomorrow. And she's trying to be like, okay, it's fine. But once again, working on trying to be the girlfriend of, like, what he needs out of her as a girlfriend and stuff. And then Machina is bored out of her mind because none of the teachers are around. She doesn't really have any friends. She can't even go to work in her condition. And the thing that kind of relaxes her running, which is also a complicated thing in its own right, because Naoto is completely unaware that she's kind of bailed on the whole running thing, but I don't know if she's like made it official yet. Like when she made that declaration to Suzu, we hadn't seen her really pull the trigger on it. We've seen like little interstitial things here and there about that. She tried to be like wanting to hang out with him, and Naoto's like, oh, good luck with the running and the guy that you like, even though she's trying to confess to the guy that she likes. But she sees this as an opportunity because she's like, oh, because he's worried about my leg. She's like, this could be my one opportunity where he cares about me more than his girlfriend Yukari or his own sister. So she pulls the trigger on this. Yeah, like, my foot hurts. I can't even move. I need you to come over. You're like, cool. That's going to go super wrong, I mean, there's already pitfalls with the Satsuki of it all, but Satsuki she's got enough of a barrier, which even that's not that, like I said, that's going to collapse initially too, because once again, even Yukari recognizes eventually you're going to come to terms with like how you feel, even though you're trying to keep this barrier because you want to keep Naoto in your life, you want to stay as friends as much as possible, but even you can't control yourself fully. You can only mitigate those feelings you have in yourself a little bit, and she's able to only hold back up to a certain extent, but like it leaks out every once in a while. But like Machina next to Yukari are the only ones that are the most active. Satsuki is subconsciously active, where it's just like she's burying everything, but she's making such a point to effortlessly spend time around him because he doesn't think much of it, because he's like, well, you're just a friend. I mean, but the fact is she's the only one you can be like 100% honest with about like what you're feeling and what you're going through, and you can't bring yourself to be like that with Yukari. You look at Makina as like a kid, so he also can't even talk to Toki about it because after everything, he doesn't feel right talking to Toki because I think he knows because of the Yukari connection. Like, I think that's the stressful thing too, is like he feels like he has no one to talk to. He doesn't have parents to go to for advice. Yukari's getting advice from her mom, she's not listening to her mom, obviously, but Naoto can't, like, the closest person he has is like Satsuki, but that's somewhat the best person, but also kind of the worst person to talk to about this, and he can't really go to his aunt about it, so it's like that makes the whole thing that much harder, that he doesn't have anyone else to kind of bounce some of what he's feeling off on it anyway, and because of that, he's bottling all this up, his urges, his feelings, and it's like he's going to like crumble under the weight. And it's not just going to be him; everyone else will crumble under the weight of all of this too. It's, like I say, it's stressful from a viewership standpoint. I'm getting stressed out because I'm like, because I feel bad and I'm anxious about how this is all going to play out. So we'll see how this whole Makina thing goes. Maybe like Makina will put out all the stops, but it will not work the way she thinks it was, because once again, Naoto doesn't even view her now. Like, he views her the same way he does Suzu, which Yukari's perfectly fine with that. And it's just like, right. That's why she's trying to be more okay with like any girls he spends time with, but specifically Makina, it's like, okay, you view her that way, I don't have to worry. If it was Sasuke, it'd be a different story. So complicated feelings and all kinds of insecurities make very complicated recipes, so we'll see where all this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.